So I'm going to share a little bit about the Linnaeus Lab, which is a project that we've been running now for just over 18 months, interdisciplinary, to sort of bring together different sectors to look at loneliness in the built environment. And then Shaun's going to talk a bit about a project that he's working on. So yes, the Linnaeus Lab is a collective of people and organisations who share a mission to design out loneliness in our cities. So we're really specifically looking at the built environment, but have broadened that out to look at sort of the non-physical aspects of design in urban spaces. We are together, our kind of focuses on understanding what's driving loneliness in our cities and communities. So I'm really excited to sort of be talking to you all now, because I think we really, really want to kind of sort of reach out to more academics within this space to sort of help us understand and go deeper on some of the research. But we can share a little bit about what we've done so far. Secondly, a huge part of our network includes kind of architects, developers, placemakers and practitioners. So we're really focused on experimenting with projects in places and spaces around cities and actually learning from what works. And then the third bit is around influencing policy and industry by sharing what works. We started the lab just over 18 months ago now, and really kind of building on what Laura said, there was this massive gap when we looked at loneliness and the loneliness kind of landscape when it came to the role of physical design in our communities, and obviously the work that's happening with befriending schemes and all of these brilliant initiatives to sort of tackle loneliness by kind of through sort of programs and things that are reaching out to people is really important. But we felt that there's this kind of really glaring hole in the policy landscape and the kind of the landscape and loneliness, and actually looking at what are the structural drivers that are making our cities and communities lonely in the first place, and taking a more design-led approach. And it's really interesting, because when we started this, there was sort of an obsession with talking about the internet and the role of the internet and loneliness, and just nothing about the kind of physical spaces that we occupy, and how they can, how a park can make you feel, or a new public space can make you feel really unwelcome and alienated from a community you might have lived in your whole life. But if a public realm is designed for the Google workers in that office and not for you as somebody that's lived there your whole life, you suddenly feel alienated from the public realm in your community. And the second one is that loneliness is far too complex for any organisation to solve alone. So when we started the lab, we started it with a developer land lease, and we're a non-profit collectively. And what we were looking to do is kind of realise that no one organisation is going to solve this problem, and we need a collective approach that brings together the research community, architects, developers, residents, loneliness organisations to sort of come together and influence change. And I guess just in terms of the the reason for setting this up, it's even more important now, I think, within the kind of COVID crisis, that we take this more structural approach, and we're seeing quite frustratingly that the kind of government response at the moment is very, very immediate, very crisis-led in terms of loneliness, and over the last year and a half, they've really started to open up to looking at more systemic and structural drivers of loneliness. They've added built environment as one of their sort of main priorities for the year, and the parliamentary inquiry that's just been launched is looking at built environment. So it's really good that these more structural drivers were on the agenda. And what we're seeing right now, particularly with things like funding, is everything's focused at crisis response, which is sort of important, because obviously we need to make sure the vulnerable people are reached, but there's a real risk here. And there was a really interesting Naomi Klein article today in The Guardian, which kind of links the two conversations we're having today about technology and built environment, that there's a risk that we jump in with technological solutions and say, oh, actually we can reach all these people through apps and technology. We don't need schools anymore. I think there was a quote by Bill Gates saying, why do we need schools if we can reach people online? And actually we lose sight of the need to kind of look at some of these more kind of structural areas. So that's what we've been doing, the why. Just to say that, we are a very small team, myself and Alice, who's on the call, act as a kind of incubator for a really broad and diverse network. And I know many of the kind of academics and architects there's several of them on the call today, bringing people together and supporting them to take action. We've run sort of several design and innovation processes to sort of surface ideas and surface projects. We've launched a kind of playbook when we first launched, sharing some of the learnings, and this is one of the pilots that came out of our first piece of work called Elephant Says Hi, which is a project in Elephant Castle in South London, looking at how to sort of build more welcoming networks. It's a quick canter through. This is another project that came out of one of our first sprints, looking at the role of kind of using underutilized spaces and housing blocks to connect neighbours, and then that went on to influence a curriculum in London School of Architects, and they produced some design goals on housing. And these are sort of some of the areas that we're looking at the moment. So workplace loneliness, we're just about to publish some research, which we did last year, looking at the role of physical workplace design on loneliness. Obviously, we need to now think about how this is relevant in the new context. Housing, which Shaun's going to talk to you about, sort of looking at public and shared spaces and young people. So it's just a really quick canter through for me, but just to say we really want to hear from people researching on this area and to join these groups around some of the themes that we're seeing. And I'm going to hand over to Shaun now.
Brilliant.
Hello, thank you, Bethan. So as I said before, I've been working with Bethan and the Linnaeus Lab for the past year as lead on the, we could just go back, cheers, as lead on the Homes Connect work stream. And myself and a fellow student, Alan Hocking University, have been looking specifically at the home and its potential influence upon social relations, and therefore potentially loneliness, recognising that this influence may be only subtle and heavily reliant upon an individual's personal characteristics. We can go to the next slide, please. So our understanding is that these characteristics of the home environment may facilitate what is described as affordances, so actions or interactions that may potentially influence the formation and quality of social relations. So for instance, the opportunity to see a neighbour through a window or from a balcony. This influence is perhaps best understood if the affordance didn't exist and there wasn't the opportunity in the first place, something we've been made acutely aware of during these current circumstances, and the restrictions on social interactions outside of the home. As you can see from these images, certain physical characteristics of the home facilitate social interactions, allowing in this case for street bingo, balcony fitness classes and conversation between neighbours, but perhaps opportunities that we normally take for granted. Yet these are characteristics which have been identified in past research. Go to the next slide, please. So here's a chart that we put together, and I'm sure there's probably a few things missing, but it presents the literature which identifies the potential relationship between the physical characteristics of the home environment and the social relations or interactions. So characteristics like access, density, identity, layout, as you can see on the left-hand side. So these have been arranged by both date and by context, and we've broken down the home environment into 4 groups. So in red, the home, referring to both private and social dwellings, co-housing in orange, student accommodation in pink, and the neighbourhood and street in yellow. And as you can see, the majority of the literature is focused on the characteristics of the neighbourhood and the street, so things at a broader scale, predominantly discussing things like density, access and layout. Sorry, if you go back a sec. And while there's still been some recent studies looking at co-housing and student accommodation, there seems to be a significant absence of literature focusing on characteristics of the home. Next slide, please. So myself and Amwin decided to, or intended to, analyse 2 residential typologies at the university, simply using the university as we had easy access to these. And the intention was that we'd use this as a pilot study for future work, looking at other residential typologies, working with the lab and in collaboration with residential developer lenders. Unfortunately, due to the current circumstances, we were never able to do this, and we were only able to conduct a survey asking students how they felt about the home environment, and if they could identify any characteristics which they potentially felt influence their social behaviour. Next slide, please.
Just 1 minute, if that's okay.
That's fine. So interestingly, quite a few of the students living in one of the typologies highlighted the characteristics of the kitchen window, as you can see here, and the arrangement of the window with the entrance on the left-hand side, meaning students were able to observe each other coming and going. So we believe this could potentially lead to a greater sense of familiarity amongst students as they begin to recognise each other through observations, establishing weak ties, which may develop into more intimate social relations. Now, obviously, this is only within the rather specific context of the university, but we believe these characteristics and affordances, things like visibility, arrangement, and orientation, play a crucial role with respect to the home and particularly city living. Next slide, please. So if we look to an example, for instance, the Will Crooks estate in Poplar, and as you can see from this photo, the design and orientation of these homes affords a high level of visibility, along with an active frontages, providing opportunities for observational and incidental interactions. Residents are able to observe the shared space below, as you can see, and parents could regularly be seen watching from the balconies whilst talking with other neighbours. Speaking with the residents here highlighted the strong sense of community and familiarity they share, which, while perhaps heavily influenced by social and cultural factors, as well as the length of occupancy, I feel is arguably also strengthened through the physical characteristics of these homes and the affordances they provide. So we go to the final slide. So if we return to the chart, we believe there may be opportunity for future research which focuses specifically on physical characteristics of the home and their potential influence on social relations. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you. Bethan, if you feel up to it, there's a question from Fiona about whether there's an environmental element to this, and are biodiverse green spaces perhaps more important, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, it's a really really good question. Absolutely. I think when we're looking at the work, both within the housing work that we're doing, public realm and offices, looking at biophilic spaces are really important. You know, I think certainly, you know, we're seeing that right now within, you know, we're doing a bit of work to observe kind of patterns around people most at risk from loneliness during the COVID outbreak, and the role of housing typologies, and certainly kind of access to good quality green space is both important for connecting with neighbours and for mental health.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and I do hope you feel well soon.